Ethereum is useless. Nobody is using it anymore, and its number 2 spot as the most popular crypto is probably set to end soon. And that's just because it has such a lack of leadership, high fees, and that we really haven't seen a lot of innovation. When you think of the past 2 years of the massive bull run we just had, we saw Bitcoin hit new all-time highs, Solana hit new all-time highs. We watched meme coins go to billions like Pepe and Dog with Hat. And then we had AI completely reshape everything. And when you can look at all that money that was flowing around, none of it came to ETH. At this point, what is the largest decentralized network has basically become the largest decentralized group of anonymous bag holders. I want to dive into a small team which is betting everything on Ethereum because they feel so strongly about the foundations of what Ethereum stands for that if they succeed, they might just make Ethereum great again. We're going to talk about Vitalik's vision for Ethereum and how this small team is trying to bring that to life, give you an overview of their architecture and why you should be excited about it and how this blockchain is really different than others. I'll kind of give a quick overview of how they've been doing their fundraising and how they let everyday people like you and me get a chance to invest at the ground floor. Additionally, kind of go over the ecosystem about what exciting projects are up and coming that we should be paying attention to. But let's dive into today's video and go through it. Now, Vitalik for a long time has known that Ethereum has scaling issues, right? Even today in 2025, Ethereum is extremely slow, and while fees have gotten significantly cheaper, are extremely expensive when you compare it to other blockchains like Sui, Solana, and so on. And so back in 2021, he actually wrote a blog talking about the future of Ethereum and more or less called this vision roadmap that he was going to propose called the Endgame. I would encourage you to read the entire blog, but for today's video, let's get to the point and talk about the final vision, because Vitalik recognized that having a fully decentralized network, which means you are giving off a major trade-off to performance. And so we came up with this idea and this vision that maybe what we can do is basically centralize block production, but have the aspect of block validation be trustless and fully decentralized. That way, you're going to have essentially a high performance aspect producing blocks, but then you have a very large network making sure you keep the checks and balances and that those blocks are indeed valid. And so what we can see here is there's basically 3 different paths that are basically all going to the same destination. You have essentially this traditional big blockchain, which is going to be really good at anti-fraud and anti-censorship, really focusing on the decentralized aspects. You also have then Ethereum and rollups today, and you might run into a scenario where basically one rollup scales and dominates everything, or you basically have a lot of rollups in kind of this cross domain where each is carving out its own niche and culture and functionality. But at the end of the day, you can see here that basically all roads lead to this box here, which very much highlights that we need a solution that has a centralized production for high performance, as well as a strong decentralized validation to ensure that the proper security is in place, and then of course has proper anti-censorship and that it's able to be essentially the people's blockchain in that regard. And so a small team with PhDs from Stanford and MIT and MBAs from Harvard and individuals who've had a ton of success in Web3 came together to bring this vision to life as what is the world's first real-time blockchain built on Ethereum, MegaETH. MegaETH is building the fastest blockchain, over 100,000 transactions per second with instant finality, making it the world's first real-time blockchain. But what does this really mean? So later in this video, I'm going to walk you through some popular ecosystem apps that are being built. But if you were to take those same applications and put them on Solana, and a lot of people would agree Solana's a really fast blockchain, these applications literally would break. They wouldn't even work because Solana would not be able to keep up with the demand and performance requirements for what these teams are building over here on MegaETH. Ethereum at this point has dozens of layer 2s, and they are all focused on the goal of further decentralizing the network. And that is a great vision, and it will solve a lot of great use cases. But there's obviously a whole nother set of use cases that require high performance and more real-time transactions. You think of social media, think about every time you like a photo or comment and how instant that is, as well as things like payments. Like if you go to the store and buy a coffee, or for example, cross-border payments. And so a lot of these different use cases would thrive in a high performance environment. And this is really what MegaETH wants to capture. And what they've done is they've created this architecture that has that high performance execution environment, but still maintaining that decentralization in nature. And so I'm going to walk you through a quick high level of how the MegaETH architecture fundamentally works. So here in the diagram, we have all the major components of the MegaETH architecture. And what you'll notice in the center here is the sequencer. So this is an extremely high performance piece of compute. You can see here that this needs to be a high-end server with over 100 cores, as well as a terabyte in RAM and a 10 GB network. The sequencer is responsible for block production, so they've centralized this aspect in order to really achieve those high performance goals. And the reason why they've done this and why this is so important is I've worked with distributed architectures, and the number one enemy in distributed architectures is essentially physics, the speed of light. And what I mean by that is no matter how big your internet pipe is or how much RAM or how big of a GPU you buy, none of that matters because data can only travel so fast. It can only travel the speed of light. And so if you have a sequencer in London and then the next one in Tokyo and then the next one in Australia, right, there is an inherent delay introduced because data can only move so fast. So by just allowing one sequencer to take control, they can go ahead and create those truly high performance use cases. But just because they're centralizing the block aspect, they're also taking up the second part of Vitalik's endgame vision, which is decentralizing the validation aspects. So back in June of 2024, MegaETH announced their first seed round. So this was actually led, you can see here, by Dragonfly. But most importantly, you'll notice something. You'll see that Vitalik himself invested in this round among many others, including Sareem, which is actually the founder of EigenLayer, including Kobe, who of course is very notable in the crypto industry, and quite a few other people here. MegaETH had no problem raising money, right? They had a completely stacked team of everyone from PhD to MBAs from the world's top universities like Stanford, Harvard, and MIT. They also had people who had been incredibly successful in Web3 already, like Lee here, who was the co-author of the EigenLayer data availability white paper. We also here have Namik, who was the previous head of growth over at Consensus. And so what they did next was actually really exciting and surprising to a lot of people, which is they created what they called the People's Round and did a $10 million raise on Kobe's Echoes platform, which kind of really aimed to democratize fundraising for popular projects. It's been the most successful raise on the platform to date, selling out a $10 million round in just 3 minutes. And so you can see here that over 3,200 people participated from 94 countries, and the average check size was just about $3,000. And the reason why they did this is they really wanted the people of the Ethereum community to really kind of have this skin in the game and the success of this project by giving them an opportunity to really contribute to the success. Because at this point, everyone is exhausted at these blockchains that raise hundreds of millions of dollars and have essentially down-only token charge, which just make the projects completely uninvestable. And so with that, back in December, so just about 4 months ago, they completed what they called the People's Round and announced and closed the $10 million additional raise. What sets MegaETH apart more than any other layer 2 or blockchain is its ecosystem. Because when you think about DeFi in the traditional sense, we had kind of this phase 1, which was really this idea of Aave, lending and borrowing, Uniswap, Compound, and the first introductions of yield farming. And in the current bull run, things started to shift. So we had all the introduction of Pump Fund, where anyone can create their own meme coin. We had Hyperliquid, bringing that whole centralized experience on chain, and even things like Jupiter. And so in phase 3, we're really seeing this evolution to what is now going to be real-time applications, and that was what a lot of projects on MegaETH are trying to build. MegaETH at this time has launched their fully functional testnet, and if you click this live button here, you can actually see there's quite a few apps already live and available for use. And I found the most fun actually interacting and testing a project called GTE, which is the Global Token Exchange. If you want a quick breakdown of the ecosystem, Masari actually put together this great diagram that kind of categorizes things between different DeFi categories: consumer, NFTs, gaming, social, and so on. So this will kind of help you navigate as you're looking for maybe different applications to test and explore. MegaETH is huge on community. And so what they've done is they've actually created two separate programs. They've created this Mega Mafia, which is really kind of this accelerator program to really make sure that those teams have all the resources they need to be successful. And they also have another program called Mega Forge, and this is more of the general builder program. And if you come back here to this testnet page, you can actually select Mega Mafia and then basically get a quick dump of what are the projects that fall within this classification and are part of this accelerator program. So we have Patrick's post here from Masari that has really kind of highlighted some of the top Mega Mafia projects. And so what we have here is Euphoria, which is this mobile first derivative trading, which kind of introduces this experience you can see here of social features. We have Showdown, which is this trading card game taking Magic the Gathering and poker. And then also we have some DeFi lending and borrowing platforms like Avon and TechGo. One of the projects I'm really excited for is GTE, the global token exchange. And that's because it really can only be successful on a blockchain like MegaETH. And that's because they're trying to bring that entire centralized exchange experience on chain. And a lot of projects have tried to do this, but many have not been successful because they simply faced the limitations of what a blockchain can do in terms of performance. When you think about trading on something like the New York Stock Exchange versus Uniswap, you can feel an instant difference, right? In terms of the way that the execution and speed and the way that orders get filled. And so what GTE is trying to do is build this entire experience. So basically they're saying TGE on TGE, which is launch your coin on our platform. And then you can of course migrate and manage your own AMM. And with that in mind, integrate into their full club, right? Really bringing that essentially New York Stock Exchange experience on the blockchain, and then bring it all together with essentially going through a full day 2 life cycle of it. Another project I'm really excited for is TechGo, which is focusing on lending and borrowing, but doing so in a way that rivals the performance of TradFi and trying to unlock the most important component, which is under collateralized lending. Because of MegaETH's high performance, it introduces a ton of new use cases. For example, under collateralized borrowing, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense to go to a bank and deposit $1,000 and take out 500. And that's exactly what we do today with Aave and traditional DeFi. But we're also able to introduce things like micro liquidation and risk profiles, but most importantly, a ton of new opportunities to basically leverage anything you can think about. Another project that's really cool is something like Noise, which is the idea you can see here, discover and trade trends. So imagine this idea of being able to long the sentiment or the mindshare that AI is capturing, and then essentially shorting something like GameFi, as we saw, of course, all those massive GameFi projects that went big valuations fall to crumbles, and kind of being able to capitalize on that simply from a sentiment perspective. And then there's projects like Cap Money, which just raised $8 million from Franco Templeton, which is introducing a new type of stablecoin and has been largely supported by Mega Mafia angels as well. Here's to making Ethereum great again with MegaETH, but hopefully you enjoyed today's walkthrough of the architecture, the ecosystem, and everything that's going on. Be sure to check the links below, come join the completely free community Discord, and if you have any questions, drop me a follow on X, send me a DM, but cheers, see you in the next one.